Gotta say, and I'm friendly with the ladies on The View, but they didn't say anything about this week. Nothing. You know, because it's never been their thing to weigh in on the issues.
Did y'all really think we weren't gonna talk about Jimmy Kimmel? I mean, have you watched the show over the last 29 seasons? So you know, no one silences us.
It's almost amusing to watch the way Whoopi and the rest of The View carry themselves. Just last week, Bill Maher poked fun at the show for completely avoiding any talk about Jimmy Kimmel's issue.
Gotta say, and I'm friendly with the ladies on The View, but they didn't say anything about this week. Nothing. You know, because it's never been their thing to weigh in on the issues. It's just, you know, it's just an upbeat party show. That's why they hired people named Joy and Sonny and Whoopi. But you know, girls, let me go out strong, okay? It won't kill you. I promise. It's happened to me, and I may go out after this show. We don't know. We don't know.
From the very start, The View has managed to stay in the headlines. Do you remember the clip I showed a few weeks ago where a former panelist admitted they sometimes had only a handful of hours to get ready before tackling heated issues? Exactly. So when Jimmy Kimmel was pulled off the air by ABC, the timing was striking. The View went live almost immediately afterward, yet everyone acted as if nothing had happened. Not a word. Bill Maher took aim at them for this silence, suggesting the panelists were too cautious to risk losing their comfortable positions. But here's the kicker. When they finally decided to address Kimmel's situation, what came out of their mouths was even more surprising than the silence itself.
You really think we weren't gonna talk about Jimmy Kimmel? I mean, have you watched the show over the last 29 seasons? So you know, no one silences us. And to all my friends in Italy who reached out, you have to know it's okay. We're still here. We're still broadcasting. And when the news broke last week about Jimmy Kimmel's suspension, we took a breath to see if Jimmy was going to say anything about it first. We did the same thing with Stephen Colbert.
That's simply not true. In just a moment, I'll explain why they eventually decided to bring up Jimmy Kimmel. But the idea that they paused to hear his comments and only then followed suit as they supposedly did with Colbert's controversy is pure fiction. Think back. When Colbert's situation surfaced, The View wasted no time sharing their opinions. They didn't wait for any formal statement. Within moments, they were already throwing out their hot takes. And honestly, when have Whoopi and her co-host ever kept anything behind closed doors? Exactly. Never. Which makes Whoopi's explanation completely false. But let's not stall here. Instead, let's roll the clip and see exactly how it all unfolded.
Our show was on tape on Friday, but we are live here today, and we're getting into it now. Okay? Because to be clear, you cannot like a show. Now, I want to make sure I got this right. To be clear, you cannot like a show and it can go off the air. Someone can say something they shouldn't and get taken off the air, but the government cannot apply pressure to force someone to be silent.
Did you catch how closely Whoopi clung to that line? It was almost laughable. She looked like she was terrified that a single slip could cost her not just embarrassment, but her entire career. Since when has Whoopi Goldberg ever stared at a teleprompter with such rigid precision? Exactly, never. So let's set aside the false confidence because her overly careful tone told the real story. And things only get stranger. Jimmy Kimmel is already back on ABC after what looks like nothing more than a short suspension. That return finally gave The View permission to break their silence. They always knew he'd be back, so once the coast was clear, they felt safe to speak, though even then, Kimmel couldn't resist poking fun at Bill Maher. But here's the twist. According to the FCC, The View might be next in line for scrutiny.
The FCC says they're going to go after maybe next The View. They got a new show lined up. It's going to be great. It's called Morning Wood with James Wood.
Bill Maher didn't hold back. When Jimmy was suspended, he openly mocked The View, even hinting that their show could be next in line to be swapped out for something new. Honestly, I found myself thinking the same thing. Now, let me be clear. I'm not calling for The View to be canceled. Love them or hate them, they've carved out a lasting place in daytime television. The problem lies elsewhere. Too often, they jump into stories without checking the facts. Before the full picture is even known, they'll spin a controversy, twist a headline, and present it as if it's the truth. That's not bold, it's reckless. If anything, this whole episode should serve as a wake-up call. No one is demanding their removal, but it might be time they recognized how vital credibility really is. Because if they keep playing fast and loose with reality, Maher's warning could turn out to be more than just a punchline. And yes, he had plenty to say about Jimmy Kimmel too.
You know, Jimmy, look, I don't think what he said was exactly right. I don't. We don't agree on that. He didn't lose his job for it. He said the MAGA crowd was trying to characterize the assassin as anything but one of them. Because the 22-year-old kid, his family was MAGA. As if a 22-year-old with a trans girlfriend never rebelled against their family. I mean, but was he on the left? I don't know that either. And I hate to do this. I'm tipping the end of the show, which I work so hard on to keep a secret from the rest of the show. But it's too relevant. What I'm talking about at the end, I'm gonna have to say now, which is that it is a fool's errand to try to say that these nuts who do these things are any team.
Credit where it's due. Bill Maher is practically the only left-leaning voice willing to state the obvious. Jimmy Kimmel was in the wrong. While nearly every other comedian bent over backwards to excuse his remarks as harmless, Maher cut through the noise. He made it clear that Jimmy crossed the line, but also that losing his job wasn't the answer. And here's the thing, he was right on both counts. Technically, Kimmel was never fired. What he got was a slap on the wrist, a short suspension packaged as a show of accountability. But let's be real, this wasn't just a routine punishment. ABC was playing optics, projecting that they were taking action while fully intending to bring him back. Maher voiced the truth others avoided, and his candor set him apart. That rare honesty is exactly why his commentary stood out in the crowd.
He has every right to be wrong, but look at this guy. He was doing video games with furries. He was on a game called Furry Shades of Gay 3. This kid is in his basement with VR goggles on, getting virtually ass-fucked by a cartoon wombat? And you're gonna put politics into this?
Bill Maher's sharp yet measured critique of Jimmy Kimmel's attempt to pin the incident on MAGA only heightened the tension. His sarcasm drove the point home with precision. Instead of rushing to politicize a tragedy with flimsy claims, Jimmy should have paused to do a little research. Just a few minutes of fact-checking would have saved him from national embarrassment. Had he taken that time, Kimmel would have realized the situation didn't fit neatly into any political box. The person involved wasn't tied to MAGA or any clear ideology, just an individual without obvious affiliations. But Jimmy, eager to ride the anti-MAGA wave, jumped in without evidence. That's what made Maher's mockery sting so deeply. It was rooted in truth. Kimmel's reaction wasn't just impulsive, it exposed him as partisan and careless. Maher wasn't mocking for the sake of comedy. He was sending a reminder. Facts matter far more than spin.
He doesn't belong in either party. He belongs in a straitjacket. He's an outpatient who should not be out. But you have the right to be wrong or to have any opinion you want. That's what the First Amendment is all about. I was defending it last week on this show against what they're doing in England against the left. Come on, guys, be fair.
Let's be clear, Jimmy Kimmel's removal from late night wasn't solely about his comments. Money was at the heart of it. His anti-MAGA outburst sent Disney, ABC's parent company, into a financial tailspin. And we're not talking about a minor dip. Reports say Disney's stock dropped nearly 2%, roughly $4 billion in market value within hours of Kimmel's rant. Losses of that scale rattle both management and investors. So ABC didn't bench Kimmel out of principle or ethics. They did it to stop the financial bleeding. It was damage control, plain and simple. When billions are on the line, shareholder panic outweighs loyalty to a single late-night host. Kimmel's suspension wasn't just a slap on the wrist. It was a calculated sacrifice to protect Disney's bottom line.
Organization organization. Antifa is a broad designation with no identifiable leader and no observable plan, like the Democrats. So Jimmy, let me just say, pal, you did a great, funny show for 2 decades. You should be proud of that. If this firing goes for you the way it did for me, you'll get 23 years on a better net.
Maher couldn't wrap up his remarks without throwing a few pointed jabs at the Democratic Party. And honestly, who could fault him? Since their crushing election loss last year, the DNC has looked like a shadow of what it once was. What used to seem like a well-oiled political machine now resembles a chaotic circus scrambling for the crowd's attention. Their struggle to stay relevant in the national conversation is obvious. There's no clear leader to rally behind, no unified message, and no consistent direction. Just a lot of noise. To keep their base engaged, the party leans on stunts, theatrics, and endless distractions. That's why Maher's critique landed so strongly. He voiced what many already see. The Democratic Party isn't driving the conversation anymore. Lacking identity, it's simply waiting in the wings for someone, anyone, to take charge.
Is letting the so-called comedy show return after a week's suspension. Some broadcasters are refusing to let his show back on air. Nexstar Media Group, which is the largest local TV broadcasting company in the US, announced that its stations will focus on continuing to produce local news and other programming relevant to their respective markets. What good news. Look, the company says, we made a decision last week to preempt Jimmy Kimmel Live following what ABC referred to as Mr. Kimmel's ill-timed and insensitive comments at a critical time in our national discourse. We stand by that decision, pending assurance that all parties are committed to fostering an environment of respectful, constructive dialogue in the markets that we serve.
Here's where things get especially interesting. Some media outlets are now hesitant to bring Jimmy Kimmel back onto their networks, worried that his presence could hurt their bottom line. For ABC, that hesitation could spell real financial trouble, especially if partner networks that usually pay to air Jimmy Kimmel Live decide to back away. When money is at stake, hesitation can be devastating, but the lesson here isn't just financial. That reluctance signals something bigger. The endless wave of anti-mega grandstanding is starting to wear thin, not just with audiences, but with corporations as well. For years, networks treated that narrative as untouchable, safe, even profitable. Now, the cracks are showing. Viewers are tuning out, media partners don't want the baggage, and advertisers are treading carefully. With multiple hosts in the spotlight, it's becoming clear a cultural shift is already underway.
It comes after Sinclair, the broadcasting company that makes up America's largest ABC affiliate groups, announced that it would be preempting Jimmy Kimmel Live across ABC affiliate stations and replacing it with news programming. And you know what? They know that the audience has had enough of Jimmy Kimmel. Let's just look back at some of his comedy content. Here he is celebrating when they tried to censor Donald Trump.
Trump has been suspended from Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and even Snapchat. But don't worry, Mr. President, there are still plenty of apps you do have access to. You still have Spotify to drown out the sound of millions of people cheering as you leave. You still have Pet Finder since you're on the outs with Mike Pence. You have Cameo, which will soon be your primary source of income.
So what does all of this really show us? The weak response from The View, Bill Maher's sharp criticism, and Jimmy Kimmel's suspension all point to something much larger than one late-night host tripping over his own words. At its core, this is about money, influence, and a culture that's beginning to crack. Disney didn't sideline Kimmel out of moral outrage. They did it because billions vanished from their market value in a single day. And The View's so-called courage, it was nothing but false confidence, breaking their silence only when it felt safe. Maher, whether you agree with him or not, stood almost alone in speaking plainly, even when it meant holding his own side accountable. Meanwhile, media outlets themselves are showing hesitation to carry Kimmel's show, fearing the backlash could be too costly. The bigger picture is clear. The old formula of staged outrage and empty theatrics is losing its grip, and audiences are beginning to notice.